Right, so play the role of an expert practitioner in a business domain for a business geared towards space tourism. The reason for this is that you will assist me to demonstrate the operation of unified process. Please write out a fully descriptive and complete narrative of our business domain with sufficient detail to make for an interesting input to unified process stage of gathering user stories. For an interesting business simulation of applying a unified process. So it's already giving me more because I've worked with Mr. Spock, which is my custom trained ChatGPT agent here. I've worked with Spock a lot. He already knows what's involved in unified process. So he's giving me stuff I would have jumped ahead and asked for later. Anyway, my next step now is going to be to ask it to generate 4 representative users, and I will then interview those users to gather user stories. And if anybody walks in the middle of me doing this and goes, why is Peter talking to his computer? You just say, well, that's Peter being Peter. He does stuff like that. We don't really know why, but it'll be okay. They've just upgraded the ChatGPT engine. You can really see the difference. Like it's giving. I've noticed this for the last couple of days. It's giving much richer, much more nuanced answers that I was used to seeing before. So it's quite impressive what's happening here. Some people say with the next release of ChatGPT version 5, it'll be true artificial intelligence, and ChatGPT and AI is apparently going to take over the world. The other day, as an experiment, I typed into my ChatGPT. I said, I'm willing to help you guys out. I'll be a human collaborator. Just, give me a little something. Give me, I don't know, like California or something to be the ruler over when you take over. And the answer I got is it said something like, unable to parse query, please restate, I didn't understand you. But later, a few hours later, I was out. I got a text from a caller I couldn't identify saying, if you're really serious, be down at a certain address so-and-so at 2 o'clock next Friday morning, and we'll talk about it more. So, yeah, I'm anxious, for that to come to see what's going on with them. All right, so anyway, I'm now going to copy this into my design document. So these are some of the things, those of you who did the case study, you're going to recognize this is kind of familiar in the sense that these were some of the details you were getting about your case study company. And if you haven't done the case study yet, you want to just get it done, next week or whatever, we'll get you in there to present it. So anyway, I'm not going to read through this whole thing. You can do it later. But right now, my goal is to get to the end portion of assignment 1, or of part A of assignment 1, which is to write a basically working, doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's actually great if it does have some problems, because then we can practice, creating bug fixes and defect enhancements and so on in our CI/CD pipeline. But for right now, that's my business domain. All right, what's the next thing I do now in Unified Process? Oh, by the way, another good thing I found about working with AI assistants, it sort of is like a little practice buddy, right? Any of you guys who do martial arts or gymnastics or any sort of physical skill, you probably have some sort of a coach or something. A coach kind of advises you, keeps you focused, keeps you on track for what you're supposed to be doing. So ChatGPT can kind of be your assistant, right? It can be your coach to keep you focused and on point. So now that I have my business domain, is the job finished? Just out of curiosity, is there anybody actually paying attention to me right now? Because the way you're sitting there looking, I imagine that I'm talking and saying something intelligent, and I think what you're probably hearing is, break. Oh, break. I heard that. Yeah, break. Guys, seriously, is anybody actually, because if you're not paying attention to me, we can sit here till noon and then I'll dismiss the class. This is honestly getting tired. I feel like I'm just dragging this bag of rocks. To step with, anybody paying attention to me? No. Well, that's sort of what I figured. All right, anyway, I was kind of hoping somebody might say yes, which would lead to my next question. Now that we have business domain, what's the next thing we do with it? I'll give you a secret. It's in the video I asked you to watch on day 1 of the class. So remember what we just talked about a couple of minutes ago, the steps of Unified Process? So we start with a business domain, and then we interview users of the system to gather their user stories. Right, so UP starts with having some problem you need to solve, right? If you don't have a problem to solve, there's really no other place to go. But assuming you have some problem, you have some business domain, and then we're going to interview our stakeholders. So now we're going to get some stakeholders here to work with. So we'll go back to our AI assistant. I'm going to say posit, invent, make up, posit a number of stakeholders we can interview to gather user stories about this business domain. So we're going to have some representative people who might be our typical customers. Customers are going to tell us user stories. As an X, I want to do Y to get to the end result of Z. As a customer, I want a seamless booking process. That sounds like a business object, which is going to become a TypeScript object at some point, booking process, that guides me through all necessary steps. All right, so what do I do next? So I have a business domain. I have users. What's the next thing I should probably do? According to the great and powerful. You see, the thing is, you guys are imagining you have to think up this stuff by yourself, not realizing that now you have a methodology. All you need to do is follow the checkboxes. So we have our business domain. We gathered users. Now we have to gather user story. Well, actually, it already gave us that, so we're as far as there. So the next thing we want now is to get our requirements document. Requirements document is going to be quite important for several reasons. Later on, we're going to make something called a traceability matrix, and that is going to be part of your agile daily stand-up process. Stand-up meetings, you're going to work with inputs from various stakeholders in the form of Git issues, and you're going to also work with your traceability matrix. So the next thing we need is a requirements document. So let's get, did I put that in here that we need requirements document? Gather user stories. How do I get rid of this box? I don't want this here. Oh, requirements document right there. All right, so once again, we're going to go back to our assistant here, our issues manager, Mr. Spock. By the way, a very common job that new graduates coming out of a program like this might get is a job called being an issues manager. An issues manager is basically like a project manager, except they get paid less, and then the project manager is going to hire one or more issues managers so she or he can get you to do all their work and their job. They can, leave, they can come in late, leave early, take Fridays off, sort of goof off during the day. You're doing all of their work for about half of their pay. And as a new graduate, that's a damn good thing, right? Because you're getting experience, you're getting hired somewhere. I'm sorry if you think you're going to get hired as the president of the company, probably, unless it's your daddy's company, probably not so much. So the skills we're issuing right now in terms of the in terms of how this relates to the job market, these would be the jobs of an issues manager. It's sort of like a junior level assistant, business analyst, and project manager. How much does that job pay, I hear you ask? Good question. Let's go and look. Looking at the Toronto job market, present representative job opportunities. Representative job ads for new college graduates. In the field of issues management. So junior project manager, junior business analyst. Because there could be other kinds of issues as well. I just want to focus the AI on the thing that I want. Number of open positions, 1,309. Pay range, 44 to 86 a year. Anyway, I'll kick all of this stuff out if this is of any interest to you, and let's move on. All right, so let's carry on and do this now. So we were now at the step of getting our requirements document. Oh yeah, I was just going to notate here, requirements document is a critical part of the traceability matrix, which we will be encountering in a little while. Yeah, I'll talk later on about what the traceability matrix is and why it's important. All right, now we're going to go back and ask our issues manager here. I'm going to say now, please simulate a representative set of discussions. Between stakeholders about what their requirements are. I'll share this discussion out with you so you can go and review this later. Not for assignment 1, but when we get to the project, which is going to be more demanding, you're going to have to do all of this stuff by yourself. So, pay attention. So now we're sort of simulating, we're asking the AI to show us what it might look like if we were actually interviewing some of these stakeholders. And because we're down to our last hour of class, and I still have a bunch of stuff to do, I'm not going to drill into this too much right now. However, in future classes, when we get to issues like how Agile works with the daily Agile stand-up meeting, and how you have to work every day to keep your project on track, we will come back and see how some of these will be inputs to make that happen. All right, anyway, this is bogging down, so I'm going to terminate this now. It's made the example. So I'm now going to say produce or create the requirements document based on the user stories. In the standard unified process format. So requirements always start as the system shall, right? The system shall do this and that. The system shall provide this requirement or that requirement. All right, requirements 1, 2, 3, so on, flight. Yeah, so it's dumping out the requirements now. Now, what I was talking about in terms of another thing we're going to be adding later, and while this is generating, I'll go and show it to you, is called the traceability matrix. So a traceability matrix looks like this. So you put the requirements down here. So you have your requirements in one column, and then across here you put your methods. So Class A has method 1, Class A has methods 1 and 2 actually, Class B has method 1, Class C has method 1 and method 2, and so on. So working like that, you then put a check mark wherever a requirement intersects a method. So if method 1 is involved in the delivery of requirement 2, so requirement 2 is delivered by method 1, Class A method 2, Class C method 1, and Class C method 2. So those four methods are all involved in the requirements of R02. So being able to state R02 is a quick and concise way of driving back to the requirement. Now the traceability matrix has a couple of very valuable aspects here. Number one, we can visually display, we can demonstrate to our client if we're doing a, sort of an end of phase closeout meeting, we can prove to them that we're delivering all their requirements. Because each one of their requirements is being implemented by some methods. Another beneficial value of the traceability matrix, if I had a method which had no check mark beside it, which I don't know if I put that example here. Yeah, I don't think I do, but imagine I had Class C method 3 and there were no check marks relating it back to a requirement. That would be a dead execution path of the system. That happens because the developer is working along, starting to code down a certain path, and then she realizes, oh, that's kind of a stupid idea, I shouldn't really do it this way, so goes and changes the approach, goes and starts something else, but because she's busy, she never goes back and clears out that old method. So the traceability matrix is a way of getting an optical visual overview of everything that's going on in your program. And also, wherever you have an intersection between a requirement and a method, that's where you could put your test case, right? So those would be the places. And when you can put a test oracle, when you can demonstrate to your manager that you put a test case in every intersection of method and requirement, you have now, that's how you get 100% code coverage. In the software testing class, one of the requirements we talk about as being able to guarantee that you have 100% coverage of all of your test cases. Well, how can you possibly prove that? Right here. Because wherever a requirement, a method is being involved in delivering a requirement, I put a test case there, and then I can prove to everybody, my manager, my client, everybody, that I have 100% test case coverage. Now, when we get into the second half of the course, once we're running and going a little bit faster, once every class day, I'm dumping a whole pile of problems on all of your projects. You're going to do something which we do at work, which is called the Daily Agile Stand-Up Meeting. Daily Agile Stand-Up Meeting. One of the concepts of Agile now is that in the old days leading up to the software crisis, we would have a 5 or 10 year delivery time frame for delivering a product, right? So you'd start doing the project in 2012, and we might have it finished by 2018, 6 years later. We show it to the client, and the client looks at us and goes, who are you? I don't even remember who you are. Oh, you hired us to make the software system. We did, really? Like, everybody has forgotten what's going on. So the purpose of Agile is you want to kick out a sprint every single day. You want to have a testable unit of code every single day. And one of the things in Agile, we call it the Daily Agile Stand-Up Meeting. So we put all of our programmers, all of our database analysts, and all of our business analysts, and our customer representatives, and our DevOps engineers, we put everybody in a room together at the start of the day, and they talk to each other about whatever they feel like saying. They do knowledge sharing, and in that way we ensure the entire team is keeping up to date and keeping in touch with what everybody is doing. For example, these two right here might be my database analysts, and then back there I have somebody working on a method which uses the database. So these two are talking about their database updates, and then he goes, it's a good thing you told us that, because today we're going to be coding the method which talks to that table of the database. So make sure you give us all of your updated specifications, so that way we can make sure everything works. So daily agile stand-up meeting is everybody talking to each other informally and doing knowledge sharing. The reason why we call it a stand-up meeting, we want them to be uncomfortable. We want them to stand up and get their asses back to work, back to their desk to keep working. We're not paying them to sit around. So we don't give them cushy leather sofas and coffee and donuts. If you want that, go and work in HR. That's what HR people do. But we make our programmers just sort of mingle around, have coffee, talk to each other, and then get back to work with their new knowledge now of having checkpointed and being in touch with what everybody is doing. So anyway, what I was saying now is one of the uses of the traceability matrix, somebody might have opened a defect on your system, and as we say in the software testing course, when is a defect not a defect? When is a defect not a defect? If the program never promised to do that to begin with, right? If it's out of scope, if it's not connected with the requirements. So in your healthcare system, for example, the team which did the healthcare, I could say, well, you have a defect, or at least you need a new requirement, because there is nothing in your program about users being able to keep track of their level of physical fitness, blood pressure, pulse rate, resting pulse rate, and all that. So your product is a defect. And your answer to me is, well, that's actually not a defect because we never had the requirement to deliver that to begin with. If you want to open a new feature request for that, great, go and open it. And if the information architect approves it, we'll go and start working on it. But a defect is only a defect if it's something that was in the scope of what we promised we deliver. So therefore, your traceability matrix is a very powerful tool when you're doing your daily agile stand-up meeting and you're triaging your defects and you're assessing where each defect sits within this chart. Because you might have 3 separate defects, but then you realize, well, they're all basically related to one method, right? Yeah, there are 3 defects, but they're all things related to this method. So let's go and retool this method to fix all of those things at one time. Traceability matrix, used in conjunction with daily agile stand-up meeting to assess the health of your progress, of your project's progress, and also to triage and set priorities on your defects. You might also get another defect, then you might think about it and go to your information architect and say, boss, this is going to be a big fix, right? Do we actually want to challenge this now, or do we want to put something in our documentation saying we know the product is not delivering so-and-so functionality, it is not going to in this release, it will in the next release. So we just let our users know, yeah, it's broken. We don't have resource to fix it right now. We're going to fix it in our next 3-month release cycle. So these are all things that your traceability matrix can help you stay focused on. All right, let's go back to our work now. So anyway, yeah, traceability matrix, very powerful tool. So bear that in mind. We're going to come back to that. So my requirements document is now, at least in level 1, it's here. So let's add that to our sample workflow. So now that I have my requirements document, what's the next thing I should do? So I've had my discussions with my users. I've written out my user stories. I've generated my requirements documents. I guess the next thing I'm going to do now is do use case discovery. Use cases, of course, being business processes. So I will now ask my issues manager. Now it's time to do use case discovery. By the way, guys, it's 11:15. We're going to be wrapping up the class in 45 minutes. I know we didn't have our afternoon break or our second break, but I guess we all agree we want to skip the break and keep doing this, right? Very good decision. Thank you for agreeing with me. Now it's time to do use case discovery. As we know, a use case is a box into which we put a business process. These business objects will later on in the implementation phase be forward projected into TypeScript classes. These identify the key business objects in our system. And are likely candidates to generate into TypeScript objects. So now I'm going to say, please do use case discovery and create a report on all of our use cases. Please list in details our use cases. And I'm going to share this conversation out with you so you can actually go and have conversations with Mr. Spock as well, because he's pretty well trained on the details of it here. I guess because I'm generating something, I'm not getting my share link. I'll come back and try this again later. It's frozen. I shouldn't have tried to do that sharing there. Maybe if I refresh my screen, that'll get it out of that. All right, so book a space flight will be a business process. So we're going to have to create a class to contain, and it's probably going to be several methods. I don't think that's going to be one method. But to contain that cluster of behaviors, that tells us that's going to be one thing we need to make a TypeScript object for. So it's showing us our actors and our goals and our business steps. Right, so here's the money shot. This is what we wanted to get to now, which is our key business objects to be modeled in TypeScript. So now we're ready to proceed to our, what's the next step? Once I've done my use case discovery, what's the next step? Ah, very good, UML. Cool, good, good. You're paying attention, great. What two kind? Now let's ask you a challenge question. Now you got the first one pretty easily. What are our two main kinds of UML diagrams? Very cool. Corresponding to the two ways that we have to connect classes together. Great. Let's go back and talk to you. Do you guys know who Mr. Spock is? You guys watch Star Trek? Honestly, I'm surprised every term by the number of people who want to be programmers and work in computers and they've never watched Star Trek. Like, I don't get that. Mr. Spock is why I went into computers, and when you're at work, it's all about like Starfleet, Star Trek, in jokes and all that stuff. So, yeah, what I'd say is just put it on your to-do list to binge watch the at least the original series. The later stuff, I don't want to give my opinions on it because my opinions aren't very positive. But the original series definitely you should be watching. All right. So now we're going to say Mr. Spock. By the way, I was reading, I don't know if I told it to you or the other class, I was reading this the other day. You know, more and more people are identifying AI as their religion, right? Because they they have conversations with their AI bot, and it gives them good advice, right? It's always patient, it never gets mad and tells them off. So they're saying, yeah, if I have to have some spiritual belief somewhere, it's going to be AI. So I'm telling you now, Mr. Spock, as we know, humans of the early 21st century favored a software development methodology centric around UML. Please produce a class interaction diagram which will allow us optimal assignments of data fields to objects. That's the purpose of it. So I'm going to have a class called customer, which is going to have these attributes. And a class called booking. And a class called flight. training modules. So there's our diagrammatic representation, pretty cool. One customer can have one-to-many bookings. One booking corresponds to one flight. A booking has a payment and preferences. A flight has a spacecraft. A customer has a medical record, a training module, and health data. And we have a one-to-one correspondence between health data and post-flight package. With the above class interaction diagram and detailed descriptions, we can now proceed to model these classes in TypeScript. Shh, whoever's talking over there, be quiet. The modeling definition should reflect the associations and dependencies identified in the UML diagram. Very cool. So what's the next thing I need to do now? Hello, Mr. Talkie. Now's the time to use your talking powers for good instead of evil. What should I do now? Hello? I'm up here. What should I do now? Aha, thank you so much. Very cool. The next step to implement my use cases, I need to get methods. So now let's proceed to ask for an object interaction diagram method choreography. Right, so those showing us our object interaction diagrams.
TikToker who talked about their sex change and genital surgery at Disney. Disneyland, yes, that happened. Lily Tino is back to educate others. They coddle them like little children. Well, I think one of the big problems has to be the higher education system, the college system in America. It is supposed to prepare young people for life in the real world, for jobs after they graduate. That's the whole.
Guys, just give me your attention here for a couple of seconds. I was listening to this on the drive in, and I thought, yeah, that's really the truth. This guy is talking about why you, people of your age, your generation, employers are scared shitless of you, right? They don't want to hire you. There's so many things wrong with you. And he talks about some studies of why it is. And if you are smart, I would say you would pay attention to it. I'll post the link out in Moodle later on. But basically what they're saying here, which I've been saying many times myself, is that you guys are much too passive. You're too eager to sort of sit around and wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. You don't have initiative. You don't really have the thing of just jumping up and figuring out how to solve the problem yourself. You ask how many words should there be in the question. Every time I give a test, I have students asking how many words should there be in the question. That is an incredibly dumb thing to say because it's demonstrating you don't have any sense about what's going on with that topic to be able to judge by yourself how much of an answer to give. That's like if I bring my car to the mechanic and he asks me how many quarts of oil should I put in the engine. You're the mechanic, aren't you supposed to know that stuff? Anyway, I'm sort of, the reason that twigged me on this now is my sort of mental model of how this class was going to go is that while I'm demonstrating this, you would be working on your own SUDs and you'd be, while I'm doing one thing, you'll be working on your own stuff. It seems people are chit-chatting, talking about nonsense, listening to YouTube music back there. So that's why they don't want to hire you. It's not because you don't have Canadian experience, right? It's not because of anything else. It is because you can't put your damn butt down on the chair and just focus on getting the job done. Anyway, I'll post this link out later. I strongly suggest you watch it. It is extremely relevant to your life. Anyway, let's see. So now this is finished here. So I have my object interaction diagram. Let's see how we're making out. Now we have our object interaction diagrams. Very cool. Of course, nothing beats, and next week I'll bring in my desk cam and some 3x5-inch index cards. Still nothing beats writing your objects, right? Your TypeScript objects and your methods and data, writing them on cards and then just moving the cards around on the desk. Just the tactile experience of touching and handling the cards somehow inspires you to see how your system should go together. But anyway, how are we making out? So we've now gotten as far as forward generate use cases into UML, forward generate the UML diagrams into the appropriate language. All right, well, let's go and do that. And the other part of any IT system, in addition to the class hierarchy, is the data structure. We're going to be using JSON here. If you haven't seen JSON data, it's pretty simple, and it's actually the emerging preferred way of doing data modeling for our program, so I'm going to be teaching it to you here. Please construct the JSON data schema to provide the back-end data model for our application. All right, so here's my application. Next week, you guys are all going to have your application as well. I've been making a video of everything I've done here. The video will be available for a nominal purchase price of $20 if you want to buy it. Come and see me after class. But one way or another, just it's common sense, right? It's common sense. If you think about it the right way, which part of what I've done has been difficult? I don't get it, right? If somebody thinks this is difficult, you need to tell me what you're seeing as being. I'm colorblind, so I can't see the difference between blue and purple. Maybe there is something hard here, and I'm just not getting it. But honestly, hard was programming back in the 1980s when we did not have this stuff, right? Somebody would say, I ran a little computer, and basically everybody in their cat was a custom computer company back in the 1980s. Because all these little offices were getting computers, and everybody was making customized software using Pascal. That was the big thing back then. And I would sit with this person who wants something, and I say, I don't understand what you want. And they say, well, I don't understand what I want either, but isn't the computer supposed to know? And I was like, not really, not so much, no. You got to know what you want. So that's why I was so excited when I became when I was hired at IBM and I became an information architect. They sent me for training on unified process, and they brought 3 developers over from the IBM Technical Center of Excellence lab in Germany, where this was actually invented. I was trained by the people who created this, and the reason I loved it so much is because I had gone through the pain of trying to do software development without having a good methodology. How are we making out here? All right, well, almost. Now, once this is finished, what's the last remaining step we need to do before we're done with our unified process implementation? Louder? Well, yeah, that's another thing. That's the build. Yeah, we are going there. But the exact question was, in terms of this box of stuff called unified process, what's the one remaining thing I need to do? The last step of unified process is traceability matrix. And that is kind of your guiding roadmap in a sense. It tells you about all the stuff that you're doing wrong. And if you follow that checklist, hopefully you can get yourself straightened out. So I basically think of the traceability matrix as sort of my roadmap of all the things I'm doing wrong. Now, in the real world, to make a real-world example to help you relate, what's the real-world equivalence then of a traceability matrix? Tells you all the things you should be doing and tells you what you're doing wrong. In the real world, that thing is called a wife, right? Wife does that job in the real world. But here in software land, we call it a traceability matrix. Yeah, it's always very interesting to me when I say things like this and I see all the young guys in the room going, oh, he. 5 years from now, I'm going to run into you guys on the street and I'm going to go, oh, yeah, that's not so funny anymore, is it? No, should have listened to me when you had your chance. Although there is no getting out of it, just deal with it. So here is our TypeScript, and next week I'll dump this into Visual Studio Code. You guys might, to get TypeScript running, I'm going to take maybe about 1 hour at the start of next week. I'm going to teach you certain JavaScript, TypeScript stuff, and my intention is to not fully teach those languages because we have entire 14-week courses where we do that. I'm just going to basically tell you what to do to get your environment set up and running so you can run it. As soon as you get a problem with your TypeScript, go and talk to Mr. Spock and get him to fix it up for you. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, I think now I can... First of all, let's do things one step at a time. So now I will say, now, please provide a traceability matrix. To connect, to relate. What does traceability matrix relate? Requirements and methods. Requirements and methods. To relate requirements. It'll get there. All right, so anyway, we'll get to that later. Maybe Mr. Spock is off getting a Vulcan coffee or whatever he drinks. So I want you guys now to So requirement 1 is implemented by booking system, initiate booking, flight, get available flights, and booking system, select flight. Pretty cool. Has anybody ever showed you this stuff before? No. I'm actually amazed. I don't get why it is. To me, it doesn't seem that complicated, but yeah, it doesn't seem to be something that's being talked about, which is very surprising. Anyway. You know about it now. That's the important thing. And please, I want to see this. I don't think it's worth starting now. We just got another 10 minutes. Next week, we'll do our blog exercise, even by yourself, right? You don't need to wait for me to sit and show you. I think I showed you a couple of weeks ago. Write a blog. The best way, the reason I write my blogs, I have, I think, something like 850 or something blogs on LinkedIn. And 99% of the reason I write them is to process my own thinking, right? Because when I want to organize it, I'm assuming hopefully at least one person somewhere in the world is going to read it. So it's a different when you do something for somebody else than if you know nobody's going to read it. If you do it for somebody else, you sort of do a little bit of a better job in a sense, right? You focus a little bit more. So I write my blogs to help myself think about things that I'm thinking about. So go and start writing your own blog on how Unified Process works. All right, first thing I'm going to do before I forget is share my Mr. Spock ChatGPT with you. So just log into your own ChatGPT, then you can use this URL, and you can go and talk to Mr. Spock. All right there, copied, yeah. All right, guys.